What's up HR fam, it's Jace aka Mini Lego, and I am back better late than ever to give you my Combat Hunter Ranger build for mod 10 and mod 10.5. Now before I get started, there's a couple things. On Xbox One I've started a new guild called My Hunter Ranger Academy. So my goal with this guild is to start an HR community and help anyone that's willing to join. There's no item level requirements, but in order to get the guild ranked up, we will need some amount of participation as far as the guild coffer is concerned. I should mention that this guild is part of the LGPG Alliance, so if you are interested in joining, make sure to send me an Xbox message. My gamer tag is Jace Foyes, look down in the description for the correct spelling. Alright, now I want to mention that I have two different builds for combat. One is a full Pathfinder PvP build, and the other is my current build, a PvP PvE Stormwarden build. So if you're just looking for the feats to my build, feel free to use a timestamp below in the description. But if you want to learn about the powers, feats, and other tips and tricks, pay close attention. Oh, and if you're seeing this video way later than you would have wished, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and if you're on a mobile app, tap the bell icon below to get notified next time I upload a video. So let's cover the full PvP Pathfinder build. So why two builds? Well, I found that not all of you like to or don't play PvE at all. So this build is focused more towards PvP, and that starts with Pathfinder. Why? Well, let's start with the powers. Hunter's teamwork and careful attack, as I've covered in my last video, these are at wills. Depending on the stance, they work as debuffs. Careful attacks allows the target to take in additional damage to anyone who strikes them, while Hunter's teamwork lowers the damage that target deals. This is extremely crucial during one-on-ones and node caps. What I tend to do is mark the target that I know will do the most damage to me with Hunter's teamwork. So for me, I always try to mark the Trickster Rogue, or if not, a Hunter Ranger, as these classes will be the ones dealing the most damage. And so careful attack I place on targets that need a little bit of a debuff so I can kill them faster. I typically put this on DC, Guardian Fighters, and Pallies. If you only have one target, apply both of these debuffs on them. Our second at will for this build is Split Strike and Split Shot. Our range attack, Split Shot, simply shoots out arrows in a cone spray, while Split Strike makes your character dash out and strike with your offhand. Which, PS, this is where 90% of our damage will be coming from, so make hella sure you rank this up all the way up to rank 4. Now for our encounters. With Pathfinder we get this pretty amazing power called Ambush and Bear Trap. Ambush, our range attack, allows us to go stealth and causes our next attack to deal bonus damage. On top of that, any target that takes in the next attack after using Ambush will then take in additional damage from other encounter powers. Oh, I should also mention that if you use a power while stealth is active, it will cancel your stealth and ambush. So just make sure when you are in stealth and looking to attack, you do so, instead of using a personal encounter. And so now our melee encounter, Bear Trap, tosses a massive trap depending on where you want to put it. The first opponent to walk near the trap will trigger it, and they will become stunned, slowed, and will start bleeding. Our next encounter is Boar Hide and Boar Charge. Boar Hide is our range encounter and is actually a personal encounter, which means it doesn't do any damage but does the following. Boar Hide grants yourself and one nearby ally 5 stacks of 2% mitigation, and when ranked up to 4 will apply this to 4 more allies at 50% effectiveness. So applying Boar's Hide as fast and as much as possible is not a bad thing. You should see a buff counter at the top left of your buff bar, but understand that every attack you suffer does remove a stack. Next we have Fox's Cunning, Fox Shift. Fox's Cunning, another personal encounter, allows us and one nearby ally to dodge the next incoming attack. When ranked up to rank 4 will include the 4 members from your group. Fox Shift allows you to dash to nearby targets, damaging them, reducing their run speed, and increasing yours. This one is really awesome and definitely needed when we get into some hard to handle situations. So I know I went over 3 encounters already, but this 4th one I tend to switch with Ambush, Bear Trap, when I need to, which is Thorn Ward, Thorn Strike. Thorn Ward is the awesome part of the encounter. You shoot at a little plant ward that when your target is inside the range and performs an attack will reduce their defense. The melee part of the encounter is Thorn Strike, which strikes out thorn vines damaging your opponent. It doesn't do as much damage as when you have one target, but it is still very effective. On to our class features. So we have 2 slots. For PvP, this is the 100% must-have, which is Aspect of the Lone Wolf. This is where we get a huge chunk of our deflect. As I've explained in the past with my last video, as powerful as we can be, we need to have defensive traits. or we will be super squishy. For this build, deflect gets handled with Aspect of the Lone Wolf. This class feature can grant us over 28% deflect chance, which is a lot. With our next class feature, we have a choice. We have Pathfinder's Action, which grants us an additional 15% deflect chance and an additional 18% run speed whenever we activate a daily power. Our other class feature option is Seeker's Revenge. This one, when ranked up to rank 4, will grant 19% more damage when you strike a foe from behind. Last but not least, we have our dailies. So the two dailies I use are Forest Ghost, which like Ambush allows us to become stealth, but it also inflicts damage as we pass by enemies. Our other daily is a Disruptive Shot, which fires an arrow at your target's head, dazing them for about a second. Alternatively, if you're not using Pathfinder's Action, Slasher's Mark allows you to lunge at your target with a slashing strike, leaving behind a mark that when they take damage restores your stamina and guard gain. Alright, that does it for powers. Let's move over to our gear. So my end goal is to get full prestige, but right now I just have one piece. I want to aim for improving my defense stats since I can already pretty much melt anything. I would recommend getting whatever grants you more defense, deflect, HP, lifesteal, regen. Any of those stats are good. As for my armor enchant, I'm using Transcendent Elven. I don't think there's any other option for this. There's so many roots and other things that can be applied to hold me down. So this is definitely the best option. So for my weapons, I'm running the Drown set. This is the best you can get for PvP, but more important than that are the equip powers. I'm using the one for Split Strike, which gives me an increased damage done by Split Strike by 10% and restores 10% of my stamina. Another good one to use for the main hand would be the Hunter's Teamwork Careful Attack, which grants an additional 12% damage. And as you can see, I'm running the Transcendent Fate Touch, as my encounter powers will siphon away 18% of my target's damage and in turn give it to me. Now for my offhand, I'm using the artifact class feature called Aspect of the Lone Wolf, which now increases my damage resistance by 1% for each enemy within 15 feet, up to 5%. Then the artifact stat increase, I'm using Regeneration, which is always good to have. Another artifact class feature that is really good to use instead is the Seeker's Revenge, as this one applies a damage over time. As for rings, I have my Lifesteal ring, which gives me an additional 4,000 lifesteal. The other ring I have, which I don't really care for, has double defense slots, which is really good, so I can put in some more hit points in there. For set bonus, I'm running the demo set, which I got this pretty much for PvE, but it does pretty damn good for PvP. I honestly don't think it's that big of a difference between having a set or not, but even a Lost Mouth set would be pretty good for this. As far as artifacts, I want to stress that these two artifacts are really important to have: the Rod of Imperial Restraint and Token of Free Movement. The Rod of Imperial Restraint gives me a strong grasping root, so this roots the targets down to the floor so I can get close enough and at-will them when I need to. And the Token of Free Movement I use on default. This is what I use to get out of any situations where I just can't move and I need to get out or I will die. The other artifacts I have or will have are going to be aimed towards HP first and foremost, then crit if not power. I will be changing the sigil here that I have over to the PvP banner that grants me HP, power, and lifesteal. For enchants, the only defense enchants I'm stacking is HP. Why, you might ask? HP is now my primary focus. HP makes me tankier, keeps me alive, and above all is always just more valuable than anything. My boons and feats will always proc, giving me enough lifesteal or heals based on my HP, so why not make this as high as I can? I don't intend to slot anything else into my enchantments other than HP. As for offense enchants, all I want is power and crit. Crit probably being more important since we're losing 10% of it in the Skirmisher's Gambit, which I'll explain later. So an awesome enchant to aim for is Brutals, as they provide both power and crit. Oh, and you might notice I have armor kits on, which you can either make via Professions or in the auction house. As easy as it is, I just slotted HP into everything I could. As for rings and neck and belt, I put in stamina gain, as my regen is already at a good spot. So with that, let's take a look at the stats. I haven't changed my stats rolls, but if I did, I would go with as much dex and wisdom, as this goes into our power and our crit chance. As you can see from my stats, I have a lot of power and a lot of crit, although I need to build more crit. As far as my other stats go, I try to keep everything balanced. One thing you might notice is I have no armor pen, which might seem a little strange, but we'll get into that in a minute. So for mount and mount power, I don't have a legendary mount, but if I did, I would definitely get the lion, as this gives a shield, which plays really well for PvP. And then here are my insignia powers. So for insignia powers, I wanted to focus on heals and HP. So all of my insignias are actually giving me hit points. And then for as all the powers, they should be giving me heals over time, either by deflect or giving me additional lifesteal. Alright, so let's move from our stats over to the feats. So here are my feats. I'm just going to go over the ones that are important. As I mentioned before, 90% of our damage from this build will be coming from our at-will, Split Strike. So we want to grant as much points as we can into Scoundrel Training. This grants our at-wills 9% more damage when attacking enemies that are not targeting you. The next one that's important is Advanced Stalking. This one is specific to Pathfinders and is intended for ambush. It allows it to last 2.5 seconds longer, and the bear trap encounter now deals additional 50% damage. The other ones I want to mention are Skirmisher's Gambit. This does reduce our crit chance by 10%, which is quite a bit, but the 50% crit severity we get in return is really amazing. Next, Lucky Blade. Critically striking or deflecting an attack grants 6 seconds of 10% increased AP and 15% encounter power damage. So now we have Wild Medicine. This one is really amazing. I want you to pay close attention to my health bar at the top left. So even with a half effectiveness in PvP, anytime we deflect, it causes us to be healed for 5% of our HP over 15 seconds. On top of that, it can stack up to 10 times, which means it can get up to 50% of our HP recovered by just sitting there and deflecting attacks. Alright, now go ahead and watch these next clips, and now pay attention in the middle of the screen and see how many times Wild Medicine procs, and all the heals I get from it. Again, this one is amazing. It even saved me from 2 shocking executioners. Our next and most benefiting feat is Piercing Blade. We finally got it. We now have piercing damage that is actually effective. Piercing Blade. Melee attacks deal an additional 15% damage as piercing damage. Piercing damage is physical damage that cannot be resisted or deflected. This is why we are going combat versus trapper or archery. This is what makes this build so amazing. And lastly, we have Blade Hurricane. Using a melee encounter grants Flurry for 2 seconds. Flurry causes your melee at-will attacks to strike 2 additional times for 165% damage each time. So instead of explaining this part to you, let me show you. With Piercing Blade, we do not need any armor pen. So if I can get 0, I would, because any that I do have will not make any difference. So we don't really have much of a rotation, it's just more of an initiation, which is as easy as hitting one button. With any melee encounter we use, Flurry will be activated. So using Piercing Blade, Blade Hurricane, and any other feats all activated at once. So as soon as we activate a melee encounter, we want to at-will the target, because we only have that 2-second window that grants us an additional 165% damage. So in other terms, this will melt the target. So here's a good clip. Let's look at a breakdown. Here's an HR running trapper, and here's what the combat build does. So that was quick. Let's slow it down. So here I activated my melee encounter, Bear Trap. So when I use this encounter, I don't even try to aim it. I just want to use it as fast as possible to activate Flurry. Because once I see Flurry on my screen, I know it's on like Donkey Kong. So stay in your current stance and just let rip with Rapid Strike and watch him melt. So here are my boons. I'm going to cover these rather quickly. So these are my PvP campaign boons. And then now I have my Sharondar, Dreadring, Icewind Dale, Underdark, Tyranny of the Dragons. Here are my Guild Stronghold boons, the Maze Engine boons, Elemental Evil boons, and last but not least, the Storm King Thunder's boons. So for tips and tricks, I thought it might be useful to go over different scenarios you might be faced with and how to handle it. So here's a little tactic for each class. So for great weapon fighters, when they become enraged, back away. Do not use your Imperial Rod if you have one, as it won't do anything. As far as acceleration, you will always have the advantage. Yes, they are fast when they have stamina, but they can't dodge and move as HRs can. Always try to attack them in the back. But for the most part, great weapon fighters are pretty easy to melt. So for Guardian fighters, don't underestimate a DPS Guardian fighter. They can do a massive amount of damage. Make sure to have your token equipped for these guys. When their shield is up and they're circling around, wait until they put their shield down to use Boris Charge, as when they have their shield up, you won't be able to do anything. Anticipate where they're going to move and make sure you attack from the back. Devoted Clerics. So for Devoted Clerics, you want to use Thorn Word, as this will lower their defense and give you a better chance to kill them. I've only come across 1 or 2 elite clerics that I haven't been able to kill because they can heal faster than I can stun or attack. So when you're going against devoted clerics, make sure you time your stuns, use your Imperial Rod and Boar's Charge, and for the most part they will be pretty easy to kill. Control wizards. Repel is a bitch. Keep moving fast. This is where stamina is important. I feel that bear trap ambush is the best to use as it will allow you to stealth, sneak up, and attack them. So same tactic as we did with the devoted clerics. Time your stuns. Always make sure to try to get behind the control wizard, especially so they don't repel you back. Scourge warlocks. That damn green circle I'm seeing everywhere. Since this mod dropped, that's all I've been seeing. Luckily, it's pretty easy to kill them. Boar's Charge, Fox is essential. Stunning the Scourge Warlock prevents them from applying dots and other attacks that can quickly kill you. When they're outside of that circle especially, they don't have as much power and defense, so they should be pretty squishy. Paladins. This is the one class I've had the most trouble with. Most of the PvP pallies are Healadins and are extremely tanky. They have a lot of HP and temp AP and they can regain it quickly. They can heal themselves and other allies, but they're not so good at healing other allies. So the best thing to do is actually kill the nearby allies because you should be able to kill them faster. Then use the same tactic as we did for the DCs. Time your stuns. Thorn War and Boar's Charge should be best against these guys. And so for the last 2, these are the ones that are going to give you the most trouble. Trickster Rogues. I'm not sure what the hell it was on for the last video. For whatever reason, I said great weapon fighters are going to be like the most annoying thing, which is not true and still not true. Trickster Rogues have Shocking Executioner. I don't know if it was like too early when I did the last video and they just weren't any Shocking Executioner Trickster Rogues, but they are everywhere now and it's extremely annoying. If you haven't seen this before, you will soon learn the pain of Shocking Executioner Trickster Rogues. So this is where our HP comes in handy. Big time. We need to be able to survive their dunks, and don't think for a second that you will never get dunked. I recently found out that since the last update, Shocking Executioner is somewhat bugged. What do I mean? Sometimes the dunks are silent, no pun intended. Sometimes it's literally you just die. No warning, no sound, you're just dead. Luckily that will only happen if your HP is too low, or if the TR has a ridiculously high crit, it can kill you. But most of the times I get killed by a TR, it's because I get 2 dunks or I'm getting attacked by 3 other guys and then I get done. When they do Shocking Executioners, they do more damage when they come out of stealth. So what do you need to do? You need to become stealth as well. You need to use Ambush a lot and Forest Ghost. And just as always, use the token as these TRs can stun you pretty bad with Smoke Bombs and other moves. My token of free movement is always on by default because of TRs. It's the best thing to use to get out of any sticky situation. So last but certainly not least is Hunter Rangers. Now I know this sounds funny, but Hunter Rangers that are using this mod or any combat mod are going to be some of the hardest to kill. If you go 1v1 against a trapper, you will always win. Once you bust out of the roots, either from just letting it apply or with using Elven or using the token, they won't be able to hold up from the piercing damage you'll deal. Against another combat, like I said, it's going to be hard. It's going to come down to who plays better, who has the better gear, and who is the better HR. But in any case, these might be really long one-on-ones, so try to kill anything else that's around. Oh, so now for my second build, don't worry, this won't take long. This is actually going to be using the same boons, same feats, same everything. The only thing that's changing is some of the powers and some of the artifact bonuses. So on that note, my main hand weapon equip power stays the same, but my offhand equip power now is changing from Aspect of the Lone Wolf over to Blade Storm. This grants an additional 25% damage. So now since we don't have Hunter's teamwork, we're going to put in Aim Shot, Aim Strike. This is actually really good and underused at will. This is especially good for PvE as well. You aim strike a target, then use an encounter power, melee encounter power, and then follow up with Rapid Strike. The other encounter we can include, as we won't have Bear Trap, is going to be Split the Sky and Throw Caution. Throw Caution is actually going to be one of our feats as well. So with replacing Ambush in our combat Paragon tree for Pathfinder, we have Warden's Courage, which increases the damage bonus and reduces the damage resistance penalty of Throw Caution by 5%. I haven't used Throw Caution all too much, but it's a really quick melee encounter you can drop off so you can start with your Rapid Strike. So for our personals, we're still going to be running Aspect of the Lone Wolf, but as well we're going to be running Blade Storm, which grants us a 25% chance to deal 20% additional damage to our melee attacks. I initially wanted Electric Shock Clear the Ground to work really well, but because it really doesn't target the enemy as well and it's just you standing still, it didn't work as well for PvP. For PvE though, it does work pretty well. Another good personal to use for PvE is the Twin Blade Storm, since we're not really going to use Deflect as much because one shot will kill you in PvE. Twin Blade Storm and Blade Storm are really good to use, especially against multiple targets. Storm Step Action is another class feature that works really well, reducing the cooldowns. Special thanks again to my friend Rin, his gamertag is Rin PuniSh R1, for helping me with this build and some of the gameplay footage you've seen. And I also want to give a shout out to Sumi on YouTube for his awesome PvE HR builds. So if you made it this far, I just want to thank you again for watching, and again say if you or someone you know wants to learn more about the HR class and are on Xbox One, hit me up to get an invite into the guild, the Hunter Ranger Academy. But until next time, take it easy, and thank you again for watching.